I'm Mick Alberts. This is video 2 of the Create a Picture Viewer in C# video tutorial. If you haven't viewed the first video, consider going back and viewing that one before you watch this one. In this video, you'll learn how to add controls to your application. First, I'm going to add a Table Layout panel control to the form. This control will help me to lay out the controls on the form. I'll point to and pause on the Toolbox tab here, and the toolbox appears. From the toolbox, you can add controls like checkboxes, buttons, and labels to a form. I'll click the arrow next to the Containers group to open it. And I'll double-click the Table Layout panel control. The IDE adds a Table Layout panel control to the form. I don't need this window for now, so I'm just going to click the form to close it. Notice, by the way, how the toolbox appears when I hover over the tab and disappears when I move the mouse away. That's because I have the Auto Hide feature set. You can turn this feature on or off for any window and pin it to the IDE by clicking the Push Pin icon in the upper right corner of the window. Now I'll select the Table Layout panel by clicking it so that I can see the properties of this control in the Properties window. Notice that I can switch back and forth between the form properties and the Table Layout panel properties by clicking this arrow. I'll resize this window by just dragging this border down. Now I'm going to find the Dock property and set it to Fill by clicking this arrow and then clicking this large center area. Notice how the panel now fills the whole form, and if I resize the form, the panel is resized along with it. But I want to put it back where it was. There. The Table Layout panel works like a table. Each cell of the table can hold a control, like a button or a label. I'm going to resize these cells to fit the layout that I need. I'll start by selecting the Table Layout panel control. Notice this small button with a black triangle. This indicates that the control has tasks that help you set its properties. I'll click the triangle button to display the control's task list. Then I'll click Edit Rows and Columns, and this dialog box appears. I'm going to click Column 1, make sure that the % button is clicked, and set the column's size to 15%. And I'll set Column 2 to 85%. These values correspond to how controls will be laid out on the form. Once I finish laying out the form, you'll see why these values make sense. Now, to change the rows, I'll first click Rows in the Show list. I'll set row 1 to 90% and row 2 to 10%. When I click OK, the Table Layout panel has resized according to these settings. The dotted lines show where the controls will be. I could also have resized the columns and rows by dragging the borders, like this. Now it's time to add some controls to the form. First, I'll expand the Common Controls group in the toolbox. These are the controls that you're most likely to use. I'll double-click the Picture Box control. This adds a picture box to the form. Because the Table Layout panel is docked to the control, the IDE adds the Picture Box control to the first empty cell. By the way, if I had accidentally added the wrong control, I could easily delete it. Let me just quickly demonstrate that by adding another control. I'll add a checkbox. If I didn't want that, I could just select it and then press Delete on the keyboard. I could have also used the Undo button on the toolbar. I want the picture box to fill its cell in the Table Layout panel control. To do that, I'll click the black triangle on the picture box control to display its task list, and then click Dock in Parent Container. This automatically sets the picture box dock property to fill. If I click the picture box control and look in the Properties window, I can see that the dock property is in fact set to fill. And I want the image to be the same size as the picture box, no matter how I resize the form. To do that, I'll set the control's Size Mode property to Stretch Image. I want the picture box to span both columns, so I'm going to select the picture box control and set its column span property to 2. and you can see how the picture box now fills both columns. When the picture box is empty, I want to show an empty frame, so I'll set its border style property to Fixed 3D. Now I'll add a checkbox to the form. When the user selects this checkbox, the picture will resize to the size of the picture box. The checkbox is added to the next available cell. And I'll change the text property of the checkbox by typing in stretch. I see that the end of the word is being cut off a little, so I'll just drag this border over a little. This final cell is going to contain 3 buttons. You might remember that I said earlier that each cell contains only one control. To get around this, I'm going to add a container control, which is a control that contains other controls. I'll double-click the Flow Layout Panel control to add it to the form. And I'm going to dock it to the parent container. The Flow Layout Panel control is a container that arranges other controls in neat rows. I'll select the Flow Layout panel, go to the Common Controls in the toolbox, and double-click the Button control. And I'll do that again. Notice that the buttons are numbered according to the order in which I added them. Another way to add buttons is to copy and paste them, like this. Because I'm pasting the controls into a container control, the IDE places them logically. Now I'm going to set the text properties of the buttons in the Properties window, so that the buttons in the application display text that describes their functionality. I'll set the first one to Show a Picture. I'll set the others to Clear the Picture, set the background color, and Close. And now I'll arrange the buttons so that they align to the left side of the panel. I'll select the Flow Layout panel and change its Flow Direction property to right to left. Notice how the buttons are now aligned, and their order has been reversed. If I wanted to move the buttons around, I could do that by clicking and dragging them. Now, to size the buttons, I'll select them. First I'll select the Close button, then I'll hold down the Control key and click the other 3 buttons. Now they're all selected. With the buttons selected, I'll go to the Properties window and set the Auto Size property to True. This sizes the buttons according to the text on them. Because all of the buttons are selected, the property is changed for all of them. Now I'll run the program to see the form. Notice that clicking the buttons and the checkbox doesn't do anything yet, because I still have to add code. I'll do that in a later video. I'm going to close the project now so that I can continue working on it. To continue creating this project, see the 3rd video of this tutorial. In that video, you'll learn how to add event handlers and how to add dialog box components to a form.